This is an overview video for G-Stomper Studio. G-Stomper Studio is a music production tool based on synthesizers, samplers and step sequences. What you see right after the start of the application is the main drum machine view. On top of each view you have a toolbar with global controls like the play stop record, the main menu or the navigation menu, and other controls related to the current view. As you see here, some of the buttons have this little triangle mark. This mark means there's a secondary function which can be accessed by long pressing the button. By long pressing record, for example, you can enable a metronome click. Right beside is the main menu, which is the main entry point for load and save operations, and the view menu, which is used to navigate through the application. The help button brings it to all the support areas. Some of them are inside the app and others are on external websites. As already said, we are now on the main drum machine view, which is based on samplers. Also based on samplers is the note grid, a monophonic sequencer to create melodies, the track grid, a multi-track beat sequencer, and finally the drum pads where you can play live. In addition to the samplers, you have up to 12 polyphonic synthesizer tracks. The number of tracks as well as the number of voices for each track can be changed in the setup dialog. Based on the synthesizer tracks, you have 3 different views. The VA Beast synthesizer main view, there you're going to design your synthesizer sounds. Then you have the polygrid, a polyphonic sequencer for the synthesizer. And a full-size piano where you can play live. Then you have a mixer with a channel strip for each track. You have an effects rack with 3 processing units. And a master section with 2 sound effects and the main out controls. Furthermore, you have a pattern set where you can arrange your songs. And finally, the timing and measure section where you can change the timing and size of your patterns. Patterns are the basic building elements for songs and live arrangements. Initially, a pattern has a length of 1 bar with 16 steps. The length can be changed to a max of 8 bars. The number of steps within a bar can be any value between 1 and 16. For now, we just leave the settings as they are. First of all, we're going to load a sound set. You can pre-listen the sounds by simply pressing the track buttons. As you see, when you press the track button, it turns blue, which means it's selected. The sample controls, the filter section, the modulation section, and the 16 steps are always acting on the currently selected track. So let's create a simple drum sequence now. To trigger a sound, simply activate some of the steps at the bottom. Giving a bit more volume. By the way, a very useful feature to set precise fader values is the fine-tune mode. It can be enabled on various screens in use of the fine-tune buttons. With this mode enabled, all faders and XY pads move 15 times slower than normal. Okay, now we switch to track 2 to add some claps. Also here we adjust the volume a bit. so that it fits together with the bass drum. Instead of using the main drum machine view, you can also create your sequence on the track grid. But I personally prefer the main drum machine view because you can create the sequence and tune the sounds at the same time. Then some hi-hats on track 9. To make the hi-hat sequence sound more natural, we add some accentuation to the steps 1, 5, 9 and 13, so that they are played a bit louder than the remaining steps. To achieve this, we need to switch to accent mode. In accent mode, the steps have a different function. An activated step indicates that if a sound is played at this step, it will play it a bit louder than on steps without accents. The accent amount defines how much louder the accentuated steps will be played. On track 7, we are gonna add a custom sample. First, long press the track button to show up the track menu, and then choose Load and Factory Sample. This allows you to load a specific sample for a track. The following dialog shows a list of sample folders from which you can choose. To show the contained samples, just tap one of the folders. Tap one of the samples to preload it. Use the Preview button to pre-listen the sample. For automatic preview, long press the Preview button. Finally, press OK to confirm the preloaded sample. To this sound we add a low-pass filter, set the cutoff frequency to the lowest position, give a bit of resonance, and then apply the modulation envelope to the filter. For the sequence of this track we use the note grid. Set the notes by simply touching the grid. To this track we apply an X delay effect, which is already loaded on effect number 2. If you want to know the value of a fader without changing it, you can simply touch the text below the fader. This shows the current value. To make the whole loop sound a bit wider, we add a stereo enhancer effect in the master section. One thing you have to know about the effect setup is that the effects have always 4 parameters, which are located on 2 parameter pages. You can switch between the pages by pushing these buttons. Okay, now we save the pattern to make sure that we don't lose anything. For the bassline we use the VAB synthesizer. First of all we load the synthesizer preset. Then we move to the polygrid. The polygrid is quite similar to the note grid, but with the main difference that it can play multiple tones at the same time. Even if it's polyphonic, we don't need multiple voices for the bass line. On the last note of the sequence, we're gonna change the length. To do so, first press the Edit button. To select one or more notes, you can either swipe over them or just touch them. Then make sure that you're editing the length parameter and adjust its value by pressing the up and down arrows. Alright, we have still plenty of space in the mix. So let's add a second synthesizer. But before we do this, we change the pattern length and make it 2 bars. Now select track 2 and then long press it to show up the track menu. In the track menu, choose Load and VA Factory preset. Actually, just another way to load a preset. For this one, we add a chord at the first step of the pattern. As we have a length of 2 bars now, you can switch between the bars by using the position controls. The red LED shows the current edit position, while the yellow LED shows the playback position. Okay, now back to the main drum machine. We add one more hi-hat to complete the sequence. First select track 8, then do a couple of adjustments, and finally activate all steps. Since the pattern length is more than 1 bar, we have to copy the sequence to the other bars. To do so, long press the track button to show up the track menu, and then choose Clone Current Bar Position to copy the sequence from the current bar to all other bars. Another way to copy the bars is to use the automatic clone, a very powerful feature which can be enabled by pressing the position LEDs. The automatic clone allows you to copy the sequence instantly when you create it. Alright, let's save one more time and then we start with a short arrangement. For the arrangement, we are moving to the pattern set. The pattern set provides 64 slots where each can load a single pattern. The patterns can be completely different length, different samples used, different effects, actually anything you can change in a pattern. The simplest way to create an arrangement is to copy your bass pattern to multiple slots and then modify the different patterns. Currently we've only loaded a pattern to slot 1, so we're gonna copy that to slot 2, 3 and 4. To copy a pattern, long press the pattern slot to show up the menu, then choose Copy Pattern, and finally select the destination slot. The name can just be confirmed, it's not mandatory to change it. So let's copy the pattern to slot 3 and 4. And now move to the mixer to mute some of the tracks. Okay, now back to the pattern set. In slot 2 we just keep the bass pattern. Now let's finish up slot 3 and 4. Okay, now let's save the pattern set. As you notice, when you switch between the pattern slots during playback, they won't be changed until the pattern is over. So all of your pattern changes will always fit into the beat. What we do now is to record some pattern changes to a song. First of all, enable the song mode, then press record and play, and just change the patterns as you want them to be arranged in the song. Now the recording is finished and you can play your song. Hope you're enjoying G-Stomper Studio.